if you're a security manager and you're managing a security function, you still have to understand some of the fundamental concepts. So however it is that you learn it, whether it's audiobooks, mentorships, certifications, or doing capture the flags, all of them help.
Welcome to the Circuit Magazine, the #1 source of information on protection matters, the industry-leading magazine for all security professionals who want to stay ahead of the game.
People often talk about upskilling from a physical to a cyber or converged security specialist, but what does it really mean? We are here with Shaun Southall, the one and only converged security specialist, and we are going to look at this in a bit more detail. It's a pleasure to have you on, Shaun. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me.
No, my pleasure. My pleasure. It's great to have you on, and I know you've spoken at several of my other events, and great to recently catch up in person. But let's get into it with our 3 quickfire questions and grapple with this topic. What's the problem with the industry as it sort of stands in relation to being both proficient in physical and quote unquote cybersecurity?
Bringing it into one problem is kind of difficult because there's so many. One of the major problems is that we see it in a siloed way, that we are still talking about physical and information security as separate disciplines. What I found, and from my perspective, my journey from physical into InfoSec was simply by virtue of physical security becoming part of the attack surface. So I had to upskill in cybersecurity and understand some of the fundamental concepts in order to be good at my job in physical security, because essentially I was part of that attack surface and could be attacked. So it was natural for me to want to upskill in that area. I think one of the things you have to have is the motivation and the interests to be able to do it. And from when I was about 7 or 8 years old, I was coding in BASIC back then. And that's not Visual Basic. That's the first BASIC, the Sir Clive Sinclair BASIC for the listeners who are as old as we are. But having that kind of passion and having that interest is part of it. I mean, you don't need it, but it definitely helps. So yeah, it kind of smoothed the pathway a little bit to then develop my interest further and take that understanding further and make it valuable to my job. And of course, now it's kind of pivoted into a career move.
I like that. So and you mentioned BASIC. I played around with QBasic, QuickBasic. Not the same as yours. Not as illustrious, of course. But your own career. What about you? Right. You've mentioned your childhood experimentation with programming and coding. Where's your passion for both sides of the house really come from? How it seems to me that it would have been more logical for you to start off in InfoSec.
Maybe. Yeah, I kind of fell into physical security by accident. So really, there was no real passion there in physical security. I actually saw my career becoming a translator. So I studied French, German, Italian at university and still speak 3 languages, 4 if you include Brummie, reasonably well. So that's where I saw my career going. But as it turned out, Google managed to get this really good algorithm called Google Translate, which actually does a pretty good job. When I was at university, it was Babelfish, and it wasn't very good. So now the role of translator is kind of limited. And certainly with those languages as well, you really have to speak some niche languages for that to be a career. So I fell into physical security. And then as time went on, as I said, the kind of the way that physical security has developed to becoming security means that it's natural that I had to then pull upon some of my previous experiences. And the coding is funny. You mentioned about basic being on another level, and it really isn't. It was quite simple. I made I remember making a football management simulator when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and it was my primary school class against the other primary school class. And it was really primitive. It was just like text on a screen. It wasn't like Football Manager or anything like that. But I remember my dad telling me, get out and play with your friends. You're gonna turn into Kevin Mitnick. And of course, you'd seen these photos of Kevin Mitnick on TV, looking like a serial killer. and didn't want me to turn out like a guy who the feds were chasing for 2 years to then put in prison. So whilst it may seem on the face of it natural, I would have started out in InfoSec. It was just kind of an interest when I was younger, and it was put on the back burner a little bit whilst I progressed with languages. So yeah, it was it wasn't quite as cut and dried as it sounds.
I like it though. That asymmetric route into physical security might resonate with a proportion of our listeners, because a lot of people come from military or police, but there are a growing crowd of people who have come from neither, which is really, really, really important. So our third quickfire, which is very important for the uninitiated, seems to be a catchphrase of mine, but the uninitiated, the physical security specialists who are absolutely not thinking or they don't understand yet how they could augment their skills. What do you want them to better understand?
Yeah, you mentioned about police and military coming into either physical security or information security, and they are an advantage compared with someone like me who didn't have any experience in that field. I think I see a lot of ex-military in cybersecurity and in successful roles within cybersecurity as well, because they understand stuff like the cyber kill chain and something like that. The MITRE attack framework would make far more sense to them than it did to me when I first looked at it. So yeah, they've got some transferable skills that they can bring directly into the role quite easily, and it will make far more sense. For me, I had to go out and actually look for it. So aside from, and I mentioned BASIC earlier, and there's some crossover between BASIC and Python. You look at the construction of the code, it's very similar. But cybersecurity isn't all about coding. It's not all about Python. There's other transferable skills that you can bring into it. And I like the CATS typology, which is that you kind of have your technical skills at the bottom. So you've got to still have that framework and that foundation of technical skills. And as you move up, there's soft skills, which are really relevant as well. And a holistic viewpoint right at the top, which is the most important. I think a good balance of all of those can stand you in good stead. So whenever I get people who are in physical security coming to me and saying, how can I get these technical skills, or how can I get enough technical skills that will help me in my role, then the first question I ask is, firstly, how passionate are you about this area? Secondly, how is it going to translate to your day-to-day job? And thirdly, how is it going to translate to where you see yourself in 5 or 10 years' time? Because it's not impossible for someone in physical security in their 40s to then become a pen tester or an ethical hacker. They can move in that direction. I see it quite often. But I also see people from a physical security background moving more into maybe SOC or blue team, or even in governance. And especially governance is an area where cybersecurity does struggle a little bit, and it's an area where we can improve. So yeah, what are your plans? What do you need? Because there's plenty of places where you can go and get it. There's Discord servers such as Certification Station, where if you want to work towards a certification, and that's the route that I took, but not everyone has to do it. It's not absolutely essential, but it helped me because I need lots of different ways of learning. I have my home lab, which is full of all sorts of weird and wonderful things. I'm not going to give too much away on the podcast, but I need to learn in that way. But also, there's Discord. There's some fantastic YouTube channels, such as Network Chuck and David Bomble's channel as well. And some of this is just going away and working on Raspberry Pis and just getting yourself familiarized. And then some of it is more on that sort of governance area, that kind of translating security management on a physical security level to holistic security management. How can you take some of those skills and build in InfoSec into it? And there's some great mentors out there, and I highly recommend it. I'm in my 40s now, and if I went into the job every day with the idea that I kind of I've done my 20 years in the industry, so I don't why would I need a mentor? Then I wouldn't be progressing every day. There's people like JJ Davey and Dr. Richard Diston as well. I mean, their mission is kind of to help people make that transition into InfoSec, because like I said earlier, security is physical security and InfoSec are their security. We've had this conversation before on your other events. The converged security is something that the industry really does need to get its head around as quickly as possible.
I like that, and you mentioned JJ Davies and the doctor. What was his name? What just for the
Dr. Richard Diston.
Diston. Okay. And I think what's interesting, even for me, like some people can be your mentors without knowing they're your mentors, right? It doesn't have to be a formal relationship. And like I'm associated with a rookie group, people who are actually fresh out of college, yet they're teaching me so many things. I hope I would be able to help them too, but I think maybe some people would have an issue with someone that's younger being a mentor. But I think we've got to realize that a lot of the skills that people in Gen Z, Gen Y have naturally are only available because they've only had to emerge in the last 5 years. So I take your point about mentors, and I think a lot of people hear that there's a massive skills gap in the cybersecurity sector, and they assume that everybody is a Kubernetes coder or everybody is something that actually does require a great degree of technical ability from the offset. But the skills gap or the employment gap really includes governance, but also marketing, and also PR, and also operations. I guess maybe that leads to a good question. Imagine you're a physical security specialist. Perhaps you're in executive protection, like our community. What is not a good first step, in your opinion? There's lots of good first steps. There's lots of YouTube videos. But what would a bad idea as a first step, to jump into this education be?
I think going straight into CISSP would be a bad move. It's a tough exam. It's a way of life rather than a certification. Also, I hear of people who've done the OSCP, the 24-hour exam, where you get a small window where you can have a little nap, and then you're back at it again. And to go straight into that, I think would be demoralizing, and it's certainly not what I would recommend. I look back at my own journey, and I've made mistakes along the way as well. So sometimes I think, maybe I tried to run before I could walk. So whilst I did have quite a bit of IT knowledge from when I was younger, and I worked in network video surveillance for 11 plus years, still I probably didn't quite have enough network knowledge. So even after I got all these ISACA certifications, I went back and did CCNA again, because still I didn't really have enough understanding of networks. And with physical security, you're building knowledge in lots of different areas, criminology, understanding rational choice theory and routine activity theory, some of these motivations for crime. When it comes to cyber, it's slightly different. The motivations are a little bit more complex, and they don't necessarily tie into TCAP, to capability of the threat agent. So, I've gone off a little bit of a tangent there, but I wouldn't recommend going into something completely technical. Build lots of foundation knowledge in lots of areas. I think web applications is something that's I struggle with, and I'm going backwards now and learning again. I've got a course on Wednesday actually on web apps, and I think networks as well. There was a few mistakes that I made where I thought I was probably better than I actually am. Is the Peter principle kicking in? Risk management as well. That's something I'm learning every day. I think as a physical security community, we're used to these heat maps and 5x5 likelihood versus impact, and eventually you get to a point where you study this for long enough, and you're working in this environment for long enough, and you've done about 5 years of everything being medium likelihood, medium impact. And one of the things I would recommend is for any security professional, not just those that are looking to transition from physical into InfoSec or bring InfoSec as part of their armory, but improve your risk management skills as well. See a lot in the physical security community, and myself included when I was in it, where a lot of it is down to kind of gut feel and expert intuition, which I think nowadays you have to be able to look for data, classify data, give it a value as well, value your data and value the information that you have. And then doing stuff like Monte Carlo simulations is it's a fantastic skill to develop in order to be able to show some value back to the board in terms of the data that you're collecting, and then how you want to spend their money. A lot of boards see security as a black hole. So even when I was in physical security, this is something that I built and built the capability of probably before I built all the InfoSec knowledge, actually, was the risk management side of it, the risk analysis side of it. But that's the most important way to describe it, because once you can show value and once you can show dollars, pounds, euros, whatever it is, then that value, you've committed to that value, and usually it's a range. So if you can think in that way, then that's a big help. And
that sounds like actuaries.
It's like actuarial thinking in terms of risk, because risk is it's too often qualitative within the security industry, and stuff like a denial of service. Until you have a denial of service, how big a risk is it? If you haven't had one previously and you're just using historical data, or you're just using expert intuition, well, you're probably going to be unprepared for it. We've just seen that with a global pandemic.
That's right. And with another hat on, we often ask, why not gameplay the Black Swan events? Because they're actually a bit more engaging to gameplay anyway.
Absolutely. It's it goes beyond the box art. A bunch of guys sat in a room.
Indeed.
Talking.
You mentioned before, Raspberry Pis and just kind of playing with stuff and getting to grips with it. It has been mentioned before that people should have a crack at a capture the flag, or on the easy side of capture the flag. I know people will hear that and go, "Oh no, that sounds enormously technical." But some of the easy ones, even I've had a go at the very simple challenges. Would you recommend that as something to play about with? And if so, what should people expect?
Yeah, I would recommend it. It's something that I do as well. And there's some great resources out there that aren't expensive. So even if your employers aren't willing to invest in it because they don't see the benefit to your current job role, and that was the case for me previously. So I went out and invested in premium Try Hack Me account and Hack the Box and TCM security actually as well. Have a yeah, there you go. TCM Security as well. Heath Adams' organization. They've all got these rooms where you can go in and practice, and a lot of it is walkthrough. And it's just about practice. And I go back to the languages, and this is where it ties in. I could pick up a language quite easily. I'd talk it every day, especially if I went to the country. And maybe I wouldn't be able to understand Italian for a few years, but then when I travel to Italy and I'm sat in a gondola, I'm I'm not there enjoying the scenery with my partner. I'm talking to the gondolier in Italian because everything comes flooding back. And it's exactly the same with programming languages as well. You don't use it for a little while, but as soon as you start typing the code, it comes flooding back to you, and it's skills that with practice you can learn. And as soon as they go from being a kind of a within your system one mental mode to system two, to back to system one maybe, and then back to system two, so it becomes kind of habitual, then it becomes a lot easier. So capture the flag, to kind of you envisage something very difficult and something tiring, like the OSCP exam we talked about earlier, the 24-hour exam. And it can be tiring, but there are some simple rooms, and they can get your confidence up. Is it a prerequisite for a career in security? Absolutely not, but it's interesting. It's interesting getting in the mind of the attacker, and also how the attack surface plays out as well, because some of those CTFs will include stuff like pivoting and privilege escalation. And these are concepts that you have to understand in security, especially if you're part of the attack surface. If you're a security manager and you're managing a security function, which includes a video management system or an access control system, and that sits on a network, whether it's segmented or even whether it's air-gapped, it doesn't matter. You still have to understand some of the fundamental concepts. So however it is that you learn it, whether it's audiobooks, mentorships, certifications, or doing capture the flags, all of them help.
And you mentioned elevation of privilege, and in fact, somewhere I have the game Elevation of Privilege, which sounds really a little bit sad, doesn't it? Because it shouldn't be a game, but it helps you understand that you hear elevation of privilege and you think, oh, that must be wholly cyber related. Yet a scam artist could make a phone call to a telco, impersonate being you, gain more access, and actually elevate their privilege just on a few phone calls. It's a mindset, isn't it? It's not necessarily everything tied to InfoSec. It's much more about a mindset, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Look at Kevin Mitnick. He wasn't one of the most skilled attackers in the world. He was just persistent and was really good on the phone. He was really good at convincing people to give him information, and then was passionate enough to just keep trying from there. And that's part of the mentality of the attacker, isn't it? They're not always the most skilled because there's a lot of open source tools out there, so they don't need to be. But getting the information is really important and really useful. I mean, if you don't have to go hunting around for it, if you can just get it over the phone, that's low-hanging fruit.
So I think then maybe I hope I'm not overstepping any mark, but I've noticed a bit of a train of thought moving from your experiences as a physical security specialist and your experience with colleagues in the physical world to the InfoSec world. The willingness to experiment or the willingness to try. You mentioned motivation. How motivated are you to learn? I guess I want to ask the more thorny question, looking at colleagues past and present in the physical security world, do you think they are too focused on gold stars, on certificates, on the completion of a course rather than the continual experimentation with a Sudoku puzzle or a capture the flag or something like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I mentioned Dr. Richard Diston earlier, and one of the things he talks about is the T-shaped professional. And that's a professional who doesn't just understand security, but goes out and educates themselves, reads books, understands decision science, accounting, finance, influence. There's so many different skills which build your professional career and how you expand your own knowledge and your own mindset. And eventually you get to a point where you see where they all interlink. And you started to touch on it there about social engineering and how that fits into InfoSec. It's a clever link because it is one individual part of it. But as a security professional, and I'm sure there'll be people listening who are security managers who've had to learn budgeting on the spot, they've had to suddenly learn how to budget. They've got no accountancy background, but they have to learn how to budget. They have to learn how to conduct third-party supplier risk assessments. What are we looking for here? You're learning on the job. And sometimes that experimentation has to expand beyond your day-to-day duties. You've got to take the time outside to go, okay, it's part of the job, so I want to be better at it. I want to learn more about it. And that was how it was for me. I didn't have to learn more about stuff like signed firmware and trusted platform modules, but I wanted to be the best at it. I wanted to know more than everybody else. I wanted to be able to answer any question that anyone asks me. And it's that kind of motivation which is, I would say, not just a motivation, but a desire as well. My hashtag CISO by 60 is still alive. I got less than 20 years, but over 15 years to get there, and I'm not going to get there just by staying in my lane. You have to expand outside of that, and that T-shaped professional is something which really stuck with me. Learning all those different areas is crucial. Even in stuff like risk. Reading books like Kahneman and Tversky's Thinking Fast and Slow. That was that started to change my mindset on certain things. The cognitive biases which we have and we carry into our work and in our personal life as well. Predicts the Irrational, Dan Ariely. These are fantastic publications that you just read through them and you're like, as humans, we're pretty predictable, actually. We keep making these mistakes over and over in history. So, I think having that willingness and desire to just expand your knowledge in all sorts of different fields, not just the technicalities of cyber. And I mentioned it's good to have that technical base, but expanding your knowledge outwards in lots of different areas. There's only so long you can go working a 9-to-5, or in some instances, much longer, and then go home and try and do your gold star certification. I ran myself into the ground doing that for a year and a half, and I would say it was kind of worth it because it gives you more chance of getting alternative employment. But was it good for my health? Definitely not. So was it good for my social life? Definitely not. Was it good for my family life? Definitely not. I had to make a sacrifice there, and it wasn't necessarily the only path. So that's something to bear in mind as well.
I love it. You are a T-shaped professional.
Not yet. You can never stop learning.
No, but you're getting to that T, and I love that CISO by 60. You probably make it a lot before then. You might not actually want it. A lot of people don't like getting the CISO job. They want to renounce it as soon as they get it. So, but at least you put it on your vision board, which is really nice.
Funnily enough, every CISO tells me the same thing, Philip. You won't. Trust me, you don't want this job.
Well, at least you got the goal, and at least we'll put it on his pedestal for now. We're coming up to the festive season. What's next for you?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, I've been with the CAA just over a month now. Really enjoying the job, and that's taking a lot of my not necessarily a lot of my time, but a lot of my mental time. It's taken a lot of my mental bandwidth as well. So I've put a kind of put the brakes on doing any certifications or courses or anything like that for now. But for next year, I'll be doing the C Guide. So my aim is to have the full suite of ISACA certifications. I'm pretty close now. I have 2 to go. So 4 down, 2 to go. But also being in aviation, I feel like I need to understand industrial control systems better. So I'll be looking to upskill in that area as well. So some more security related certifications and courses. And yeah, there won't be any finance or behavioral science or anything like that. I've done a lot of that over the last few years, and lockdown was great for that in one aspect, because it did get, whilst we were tied to Zoom for long periods, it did give us a little bit more time to be able to explore some of those different educational resources. So yeah, I'm going to get Christmas out the way and then to take the exam in C Guide. I have a couple of other exams as well to take: the FAIR fundamentals, which is a factor analysis of information risk. So quantifying risk using the FAIR methodology. I'm ready to take the exam, but I'm just too lazy at the moment to go and sit in a test center and put my mask on and underground and use my Windows 95 PC. It's like, no, I'll save that till the new year when hopefully everything is open again. So yeah, that's the plan, and then look at the industrial control systems as a focus area for next year. But another area as well, which I'm looking into, is the legal side of cybersecurity. So that's something which is often overlooked.
You're going to put everyone to shame. You're going to scare them away. We're trying to tell them that it's okay. You don't need to be Mr. Superhero person. Like you really are upskilling, aren't you?
Well, yeah, time is running out for me, CISO by CISO. But yeah, again, from working for the regulator, what we're trying to do is take complex legal jargon and make it something valuable for the industry. So taking complex legal jargon and just regurgitating complex legal jargon is of no value. If you can show how that can impact upon an entity's cybersecurity posture and then advise them accordingly, then that's something that's really helpful. So yeah, the legal side of it is something which I want to pursue. And yeah, you never know. We could be talking in 2 years' time and I'll have done a master's in law. I doubt it, but you never know.
and for reassurance purposes, executive security professionals do not need to do a master's in law necessarily, right? We're trying to encourage them to take baby steps. We don't have to scare them.
Yeah, just get the free version of Try Hack Me. Just do a few CTFs. That's enough. But well, you asked what's next. I did. Asking a question.
I did. Well, I'm well impressed. You're definitely T-shaped to me, and
Thank you.
I think absolutely CISO before 60 is on the cards, isn't it?
Let's hope so.
Well, Shaun, I look forward to seeing you again in person very soon, and have a great Christmas, New Year.
You have been listening to the Circuit Magazine podcast. Be sure to subscribe and be sure to not miss an episode.